I was talking about this yesterday and the day before, just how weak Anthony Albanese had been. Why wasn't he outraged about this? Instead, he was explaining away the Chinese action. Have a look again.
Well, China issued, in accordance with practice, an alert that it would be conducting these activities, including the potential use of live fire. It's outside of Australia's exclusive economic zone. Well, this is activity that has occurred in waters consistent with international law. The notification has occurred.
There he was last Friday. Now, the 2 points about that, Andrew Hastie, is one, he's saying exactly what China would want him to say, not what perhaps Australian voters would want him to say. And secondly, he's flat out wrong. There was no prior warning.
He's totally wrong. He's not across his brief, or he's misleading the Australian public. And number two, he should be standing up for the national interest. He should be insisting on mutual respect. Instead, it looks like he's going for stability through weakness rather than stability through strength. And let's not forget that Anthony Albanese criticised Scott Morrison as Prime Minister for the relationship with China back in 21-22. He claims to have fixed it, but instead we've gone from wolf warrior diplomacy under the coalition government, where the Chinese Ministry for Foreign Affairs put out mean tweets, to gunboat diplomacy under Anthony Albanese. And this is a very, very worrying signal.
What is China playing at here? At the very least, it's shown total disrespect towards a nation that's supposed to be friendly with. But are they threatening us?
China is undergoing the biggest peacetime military build-up since 1945. They've built a blue water navy, and they are now projecting it through the globe. They've sent it all the way down under, through Philippine waters, through the Coral Sea, down past Sydney, and they've done 2 live fire exercises disrupting our commercial flight paths. If we'd done that in the South China Sea, or if we'd done that near to China and disrupted their commercial flight paths, they'd be held to pay for us. And so the fact that the Prime Minister hasn't called this out is completely keeping with the pattern of behaviour he's shown over the last 2 years, which is weak leadership. We've had the ADF personnel who serve us in the Air Force and the Navy harassed effectively by the Chinese military, whether it's the P-8 Poseidon, which had chaff fired at it by a Chinese fighter, or our Navy divers who had a Chinese destroyer use its sonar to pulse them. He's never stood up for them. He's never raised this politically. And so our criticism of Anthony Albanese is political. He's not standing up for our country, and he's showing weak political leadership when he should be insisting on mutual respect from the Chinese government.
It's a deep worry, and it underscores why we need to modernise and expand our defence forces, improve our defence forces. The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has now pledged a massive defence spending, and he's going to increase spending by 2.5% to 2.5% of GDP. This is seen as something that's urged along by Donald Trump. Is this what Australia needs to do? Does Trump in the White House mean that we're going to have to lift our game in order to carry our weight as a key ally?
I think the message from President Trump is very clear. You've got to stand on your own 2 feet, and you've got to lift your own weight. The US isn't going to do security deals with other countries where they underwrite their security. They're going to see some evidence of investment from the countries who are meant to be allies and partners. And UK's got the message. Keir Starmer's going to 2.5% next year, and he's going up to 3% by the end of the decade. Today, in estimates, defence officials confirmed that we're not even going to hit our 2.4% GDP spend by the end of this decade. Now, Richard Marles committed to that last year. We're only going to hit 2.33% by the end of the decade. I think the message is very clear. We need to invest in our defence force, but importantly, Chris, we need to invest in our industrial base, because we need to be able to make things. We need to be able to be self-sufficient in a time of crisis or war. And the deindustrialisation of Australia over the last 30 years has left us very vulnerable and weak.
Yeah, that
all
brings
the other
me to
countries around the world.
Sorry, that brings me to the final point. Yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on this quickly because we're nearly out of time. But, you know, national security is intrinsically linked then to energy security, isn't it? We can't actually protect ourselves and have that industrial base unless we have reliable and plentiful energy, and we seem to be undermining ourselves on that front.
Exactly right. So the Labor government is rushing towards a target of 83% renewables by 2030. That's just insane because most of those renewables will be made in China. The wind and solar will be made in China. This is at the same time they're conducting gunboat diplomacy off our shores. So we will become very dependent, very reliable on China and very vulnerable to coercion. The only way we're going to reindustrialise this country is investing in reliable baseload power, which will come primarily through gas, which we have an abundance of. We are the world's leading exporter of LNG. We send it to everyone else, along with our coal, but we deny it to our own Australian families and businesses, and we're denying us the ability to reindustrialise, which is really important.
It sure is. Thanks so much for joining us, Andrew. I appreciate it.